Have a nice day, nature enthusiasts. Today, we're going to dive into the fascinating world of flying ants. These tiny insects are a common sight during the summer months. But did you know that they have a fascinating life cycle? Flying ants are actually the reproductive stage of the common ant. During the summer, they emerge from their colonies to mate and then die. The female ants, called queens, then find a place to start a new colony, while the males die soon after mating. So, the next time you see a swarm of flying ants, remember that they're not just pests. They're a vital part of the ecosystem and a fascinating example of the circle of life. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more nature-inspired content. Until next time, God bless us all. Nuptial flight is an important phase in the reproduction of most ant, termite, and some bee species. 1. It is also observed in some fly species, such as Ramphomia longicauda. During the flight, virgin queens mate with males and then land to start a new colony, or, in the case of honeybees, continue the succession of an existing hive colony. The winged version of ants and termites are known as alates. Ants are eusocial insects of the family Formicidae and, along with the related wasps and bees, belong to the order Hymenoptera. Ants evolved from vaseboid wasp ancestors in the Cretaceous period. More than 13,800 of an estimated total of 22,000 species have been classified. They are easily identified by their geniculate, elbowed antennae and the distinctive node-like structure that forms their slender waists. Ants form colonies that range in size from a few dozen individuals, often living in small natural cavities, to highly organized colonies that may occupy large territories with sizable nests that consist of millions of individuals or into the hundreds of millions in supercolonies. Typical colonies consist of various castes of sterile, wingless females, most of which are workers' ergots, as well as soldiers' dinergates, and other specialized groups. Nearly all ant colonies also have some fertile males called drones and one or more fertile females called queen's gins. The colonies are described as superorganisms because the ants appear to operate as a unified entity, collectively working together to support the colony. Ants have colonized almost every landmass on Earth. The only places lacking indigenous ants are Antarctica and a few remote or inhospitable islands. Ants thrive in moist tropical ecosystems and may exceed the combined biomass of wild birds and mammals. Their success in so many environments has been attributed to their social organization and their ability to modify habitats, tap resources, and defend themselves. Their long coevolution with other species has led to mimetic, commensal, parasitic, and mutualistic relationships. Ant societies have division of labor, communication between individuals, and an ability to solve complex problems. These parallels with human societies have long been an inspiration and subject of study. Many human cultures make use of ants in cuisine, medication, and rites. Some species are valued in their role as biological pest control agents. Their ability to exploit resources may bring ants into conflict with humans, however, as they can damage crops and invade buildings. Some species, such as the red imported fire ant Solenopsis invicta of South America, are regarded as invasive species in other parts of the world, establishing themselves in areas where they have been introduced accidentally. Termites are a group of detritophagous eusocial cockroaches 3 for 5 6, which consume a variety of decaying plant material, generally in the form of wood, leaf litter, and soil humus. They are distinguished by their maniliform antennae and the soft-bodied and often unpigmented worker caste, for which they have been commonly termed white ants. 7. However, they are not ants, but highly derived cockroaches. 8. About 2,970 to extant species are currently described, 2,105 of which are members of the family Termitidae. Termites comprise the infrorder Isoptera, or alternatively the epifamily Termitoidae. Within the order Blattidia, the cockroaches, Termites were once classified in a separate order from cockroaches, but recent phylogenetic studies indicate that they evolved from cockroaches, as they are deeply nested within the group, and the sister group to wood-eating cockroaches of the genus Cryptocercus. Previous estimates suggested the divergence took place during the Jurassic or Triassic. More recent estimates suggest that they have an origin during the late Jurassic, now with the first fossil records in the early Cretaceous. Similarly to ants and some bees and wasps from the separate order Hymenoptera. Most termites have an analogous worker and soldier caste system consisting of mostly sterile individuals, which are physically and behaviorally distinct. Termite colonies are commonly described as superorganisms due to the collective behaviors of the individuals, which form a self-governing entity, the colony itself. 11. Their colonies range in size from a few hundred individuals to enormous societies with several million individuals. Most species are rarely seen, having a cryptic life history where they remain hidden within the galleries and tunnels of their nests for most of their lives. Termites' success as a group has led to them colonizing almost every global landmass, with the highest diversity occurring in the tropics, where they are estimated to constitute 10% of the animal biomes, particularly in Africa, which has the richest diversity, with more than 1,000 described species. 12. They are important decomposers of decaying plant matter in the subtropical and tropical regions of the world, and their recycling of wood and plant matter is of considerable ecological importance. Many species are ecosystem engineers capable of altering soil characteristics, such as hydrology, decomposition, nutrient cycling, vegetative growth, and consequently surrounding biodiversity through the large mounds constructed by certain species. 13. Termites have several impacts on humans. They are a delicacy in the diet of some human cultures, such as the macaritari in the Alto Orinoco province of Venezuela, where they are commonly used as a spice. 14. They are also used in traditional medicinal treatments of various diseases and ailments, such as influenza, asthma, bronchitis, etc. 15. 16. Termites are most famous for being structural pests. However, the vast majority of termite species are innocuous, with the regional numbers of economically significant species being North America, 9, Australia, 16, Indian subcontinent, 26, tropical Africa, 24, Central America and the West Indies, 17. Of known pest species, 28 of the most invasive and structurally damaging belong to the genus Coptoterms. 17. The distribution of most known pest species is expected to increase over time as a consequence of climate change. 18. Increased urbanization and connectivity is also predicted to expand the range of some pest termites. 19. Alet, Latin latus, from ala wing, is an adjective and noun used in entomology and botany to refer to something that has wings or wing-like structures. 1. In biology, mating is the pairing of either opposite sex or hermaphroditic organisms for the purposes of sexual reproduction. Mating may also lead to external fertilization, as seen in amphibians, fishes, and plants. For most species, mating is between two individuals of opposite sexes. However, for some hermaphroditic species, copulation is not required because the parent organism is capable of self-fertilization, autogamy, for example, banana slugs. The term mating is also applied to related processes in bacteria, archaea, and viruses. Mating in these cases involves the pairing of individuals, accompanied by the pairing of their homologous chromosomes and then exchange of genomic information leading to formation of recombinant progon. Why? Before the flight male and female yellow meadow ants preparing for their nuptial flight, a mature ant colony seasonally produces winged virgin queens and males, called alets. Unfertilized eggs develop into males. Fertilized eggs usually develop into wingless, sterile workers, but may develop into virgin queens if the larvae receive special attention. Within a few days after they have emerged declosed from the pupa case, males are quickly converted into single-purpose sexual missiles. Two young queens and males stay in their parent colony until conditions are right for the nuptial flight. The flight requires clear weather since rain is disruptive for flying insects. Different colonies of the same species often use environmental cues to synchronize the release of males and queens so that they can mate with individuals from other nests, thus reducing inbreeding. The actual takeoff from the parent colony is also often synchronized to overwhelm their predators. Alat Latin latus, from ala wing, is an adjective and noun used in entomology and botany to refer to something that has wings or wing-like structures. 1. An egg is an organic vessel grown by an animal to carry a possibly fertilized egg cell, a zygote, and to incubate from it an embryo within the egg until the embryo has become an animal fetus that can survive on its own, at which point the animal hatches. Most arthropods, vertebrates excluding live-bearing mammals, and mollusks lay eggs, although some, such as scorpions, do not. Reptile eggs, bird eggs, and monotreme eggs are laid out of water and are surrounded by a protective shell, either flexible or inflexible. Eggs laid on land or in nests are usually kept within a warm and favorable temperature range while the embryo grows. When the embryo is adequately developed, it hatches, i.e., breaks out of the egg's shell. Some embryos have a temporary egg tooth they use to crack, pip, or break the egg shell or covering. A larva, pl. Larvae, is a distinct juvenile form many animals undergo before metamorphosis into their next life stage. Animals with indirect development, such as insects, some arachnids, amphibians, or cnidarians, typically have a larval phase of their life cycle. A larva's appearance is generally very different from the adult form, e.g. caterpillars and butterflies, including different unique structures and organs that do not occur in the adult form. Their diet may also be considerably different. In the case of smaller primitive arachnids, the larval stage differs by having 3 instead of 4 pairs of legs. Larvae are frequently adapted to different environments than adults. For example, some larvae, such as tadpoles, live almost exclusively in aquatic environments, but can live outside water as adult frogs. By living in a distinct environment, larvae may be given shelter from predators and reduce competition for resources with the adult population. Animals in the larval stage will consume food to fuel their transition into the adult form. In some organisms like polychaetes and barnacles, adults are immobile, but their larvae are mobile, and use their mobile larval form to distribute themselves. 3. These larvae used for dispersal are either planktotrophic feeding or lessotrophic non-feeding. Some larvae are dependent on adults to feed them. In many eusocial Hymenoptera species, the larvae are fed by female workers. In Rhopolidia marginata, a paper wasp, the males are also capable of feeding larvae, but they are much less efficient. 5. It is a misunderstanding that the larval form always reflects the group's evolutionary history. This could be the case, but often the larval stage has evolved secondarily, as in insects. 6. 7. In these cases, clarification needed. The larval form may differ more than the adult form from the group's common origins. 8. A pupa, from Latin pupidal, pl. Pupae is the life stage of some insects undergoing transformation between immature and mature stages. Insects that go through a pupal stage are holometabolists. They go through for distinct stages in their life cycle, the stages thereof being egg, larva, pupa, and imago. The processes of entering and completing the pupal stage are controlled by the insect's hormones, especially juvenile hormone, prothoracicotropic hormone, and ecdysone. The act of becoming a pupa is called pupation, and the act of emerging from the pupal case is called eclosion or emergence. The pupae of different groups of insects have different names, such as chrysalis for the pupae of butterflies and tumbler for those of the mosquito family. Pupae may further be enclosed in other structures, such as cocoons, nests, or shells. Swan. Inbreeding is the production of offspring from the mating or breeding of individuals or organisms that are closely related genetically. 1. By analogy, the term is used in human reproduction, but more commonly refers to the genetic disorders and other consequences that may arise from expression of deleterious recessive traits resulting from incestuous sexual relationships and consanguinity. Animals avoid inbreeding only rarely. 2. Inbreeding results in homozygosity, which can increase the chances of offspring being affected by recessive traits. 3. In extreme cases, this usually leads to at least temporarily decreased biological fitness of a population for 5 called inbreeding depression, which is its ability to survive and reproduce. An individual who inherits such deleterious traits is colloquially referred to as inbred. The avoidance of expression of such deleterious recessive alleles caused by inbreeding via inbreeding avoidance mechanisms is the main selective reason for outcrossing. 7. Crossbreeding between populations sometimes has positive effects on fitness-related traits. 8. But also sometimes leads to negative effects known as outbreeding depression. However, increased homozygosity increases the probability of fixing beneficial alleles and also slightly decreases the probability of fixing deleterious alleles in a population. 9. Inbreeding can result in purging of deleterious alleles from a population through purifying selection. 10, 11, 12. Inbreeding is a technique used in selective breeding. For example, in livestock breeding, breeders may use inbreeding when trying to establish a new and desirable trait in the stock and for producing distinct families within a breed, but will need to watch for undesirable characteristics in offspring, which can then be eliminated through further selective breeding or culling. Inbreeding also helps to ascertain the type of gene action affecting a trait. Inbreeding is also used to reveal deleterious recessive alleles, which can then be eliminated through assortative breeding or through culling. In plant breeding, inbred lines are used as stocks for the creation of hybrid lines to make use of the effects of heterosis. Inbreeding in plants also occurs naturally in the form of self-pollination. Inbreeding can significantly influence gene expression, which can prevent inbreeding depression. 13. Predator satiation, less commonly called predator saturation, is an anti-predator adaptation in which prey briefly occur at high population densities, reducing the probability of an individual organism being eaten. 2. When predators are flooded with potential prey, they can consume only a certain amount. So by occurring at high densities, prey benefit from a safety in numbers effect. This strategy has evolved in a diverse range of prey, including notably many species of plants, insects, and fish. Predator satiation can be considered a type of refuge from predators. 2. 340. As available food increases, a predator has more chances of survival, growth, and reproduction. 3. However, as food supply begins to overwhelm the predator's ability to consume and process it, consumption levels off. This pattern is evident in the functional response of type 2. There are also limits to population growth numerical response, dependent on the generation time of the predator species. This phenomenon is particularly conspicuous when it takes the form of mass seeding, the production of large numbers of seeds by a population of plants. An important element of the masting strategy is synchrony in production, which is most effective when it is staggered. 4. This means that there should be years of mass production of seeds followed by years of very little seed production. At high-density sites, research finds that the number eaten by birds does not increase with the number of cicada individuals, and the risk of predation for each individual decreases as 6. In contrast to predator satiation, a different pattern is seen in response to mutualistic consumers, which benefit an organism by feeding from it, such as frugivores, which disperse seeds. For example, a vine's berries may ripen at different times, ensuring frugivores are not swamped with food and so resulting in a larger proportion of its seeds being dispersed. During the flight, typically, the virgin queens and males first scatter to ensure outcrossing. The queens then release pheromones to attract males. However, the queens often try to escape the males, allowing only the fastest and the fittest males to mate. Mating takes place during flight. One queen usually mates with several males. Outcrossing or outbreeding is the technique of crossing between different breeds. This is the practice of introducing distantly related genetic material into a breeding line, thereby increasing genetic diversity. Outcrossing can be a useful technique in animal breeding. The outcrossing breeder intends to remove the traits by using new blood. With dominant traits, one can still see the expression of the traits and can remove those traits. Whether one outcrosses, line breeds with recessive traits. Outcrossing allows for the recessive traits to migrate across a population. Many traits are Mendelian and therefore exhibit a more complicated intermediate phenotype. The outcrossing breeder then may have individuals that have many deleterious genes that may be expressed by subsequent inbreeding. There is now a gamut of deleterious genes within each individual in many dog breeds. One increasing the variation of genes or alleles within the gene pool may protect against extinction by stressors for and the environment among inbred animal populations. For example, in this context, a 2009 veterinary medicine study tried to determine the genetic diversity within cat breeds to a degree of outcrossing to avoid mating between very close relatives is believed to happen in the wild. One, a pheromone from ancient Greek phidero omega p hair to bear, and hormone is a secreted or excreted chemical factor that triggers a social response in members of the same species. Pheromones are used by many organisms, from basic unicellular prokaryotes to complex multicellular eukaryotes. 2. Their use among insects has been particularly well documented. The spermatocytes then undergo meiosis, reducing their chromosome number by half, which produces spermatids. This whole process occurs constantly and takes around 3 months from start to finish. Spermathecae can sometimes be the site of fertilization when the oocytes are sufficiently developed. Some species of animal have multiple spermathecae. For example, certain species of earthworms have for pairs of spermathecae 1 pair each in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th segments. The spermathecae receive and store the spermatozoa of another earthworm during copulation. 4. They are lined with epithelium and are variable in shape. Some are thin, heavily coiled tubes, while others are vague outpocketings from the main reproductive tract. It is one of the many variations in sexual reproduction. The nematode Canarhabditis elegans has 2 spermathecae, 1 at the end of each gonad. 5. The C. elegans spermatheca is made up of 24 smooth, muscle-like cells that form a stretchable tubular structure. 6. Actin filaments line the spermatheca in a circumferential manner. In many species of stingless bees, especially Melipona bicolor, the queen lays her eggs during the provisioning and oviposition process, and the spermatheca fertilizes the egg as it passes along the oviduct. The young mated queens land and, in the case of most ants and all termites, remove their wings. They then attempt to found a new colony. The details of this vary from species to species, but typically involve the excavation of the colony's first chamber and the subsequent laying of eggs. From this point, the queen continuously lays eggs, which hatch into larvae, exclusively destined to develop into worker ants. 5. The queen usually nurses the first brood alone. After the first workers appear, the queen's role in the colony typically becomes one of exclusive and generally continuous egg-laying. For an example of a colony founding process, see Atta sextans, flying ant from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, August 2018. The young queens have an extremely high failure rate. During its lifetime, a very large ant colony can send out millions of virgin queens. Assuming that the total number of ant colonies in the area remains constant, on average, only one of these queens succeeds. The rest are destroyed by predators, most notably other ants, environmental hazards, or failures in raising the first brood at various stages of the process. This strict selection ensures that the queen has to be both extremely fit and extremely lucky to pass on her genes to the next generation. Variations Lysias sp. Not all ants follow the basic pattern described above. In army ants, only males are alates, having wings. They fly out from their parent colony in search of other colonies where wingless virgin queens wait for them. A colony with an old queen and one or more mated young queens then divides, each successful queen taking a share of the workers. The reason for this behavior is the fact that army ants do not have a physical nest. The queens are thus absolutely dependent on workers to protect them. Another variation is found in species with multi-queen colonies, such as Solenopsis invicta. The males and virgin queens mate, and the queens then often return to the parent colony, where they then remain. This process greatly increases the success rate of virgin queens and allows the creation of extremely large supercolonies. The colony also becomes essentially immortal, as it is no longer dependent on the continued health of a single queen. This allows Solenopsis invicta colonies to become entrenched in their surroundings, achieving a dominant position in the ecosystem. However, the price for this is inbreeding and the resulting loss of adaptability. This may result in sudden collapses in population when the environment changes or a new predator or parasite is introduced. The name army ant or legionary ant or marabunta one is applied to over 200 ant species in different lineages. Because of their aggressive predatory foraging groups, known as raids, a huge number of ants forage simultaneously over a limited area. To another shared feature is that, unlike most ant species, army ants do not construct permanent nests. An army ant colony moves almost incessantly over the time it exists. All species are members of the true ant family, Formicidae, but several groups have independently evolved the same basic behavioral and ecological syndrome. This syndrome is often referred to as legionary behavior and may be an example of convergent evolution. 3N1, most New World army ants belong to the genera Chelia myrmex, Niva myrmex, Noma myrmex, Lepidus, and Echiton. 3. The largest genus is Niva myrmex, which contains more than 120 species. The most predominant species is Echiton burkeli. Its common name army ant is considered to be the archetype of the species. Most Old World army ants are divided between the tribes Enictini and Doralini. Enictini contains more than 50 species of army ants in the single genus, Anictus. However, the Doralini contain the genus Doralus, the most aggressive group of driver ants. 70 species are known. Citation needed originally. Some of the Old World and New World lineages of army ants were thought to have evolved independently in an example of convergent evolution. In 2003, though, genetic analysis of various species suggests that several of these groups evolved from a single common ancestor, which lived approximately 100 million years ago at the time of the separation of the continents of Africa and South America, while other army ant lineages Leptonillinae, plus members of Ponerinae, Amblyophoneinae, and Myrmicinae are still considered to represent independent evolutionary events. 3 army ant taxonomy remains in flux, and genetic analysis will likely continue to provide more information about the relatedness of the various taxa. For an ant supercolony is an exceptionally large ant colony, consisting of a high number of spatially separated but socially connected nests of a single ant species, meaning that the colony is polydomo, US, spread over a large area without territorial borders. Supercolonies are typically polygynous, containing many egg-laying females, queens, or gins. One to workers and queens from different nests within the same supercolony can freely move among the nests, and all workers cooperate indiscriminately with each other in collecting food and care of the brood, and show no apparent mutual aggressive behavior. 3. For as long as suitable unoccupied space with sufficient resources is available, supercolonies expand continuously through budding, as queens together with some workers migrate over short distances and establish a new connected nest. The supercolony can also expand over long distances through jump dispersal, potentially ranging between continents, To jump dispersal usually occurs unintentionally through human-mediated transport. A striking example of an ant species forming supercolonies across continents is the Argentine ant Linapithema humal. The also highly invasive red imported fire ant Solenopsis invicta and Solenopsis geminata additionally use classic mating flights, thus using 3 primary modes of dispersal. 5-6 out of some 14,000 described ant species, supercolonialism is found in less than 1% of all ants. 2. In general, ants that form supercolonies are invasive and harmful in the non-native environments. 7. While not all supercolonial species are invasive, and not all invasive ants are dominant, supercolonies are usually associated with invasive populations. Some invasive species are known to form supercolonies in their native habitat as well. In their native range, relatively small supercolonies are observed, whereas they are much larger, dominant, and a threat for ecological diversity in their invasive range. For exceptions of species that form supercolonies without being invasive are mainly found in the genus Formica. 2. Although supercolonies are mainly observed in relatively few ant species, similar unicolonial populations are also found in some species of the termite genus Reticulaterms. An ant colony is a population of ants, typically from a single species, capable of maintaining their complete life cycle. Ant colonies are eusocial, communal, and efficiently organized and are very much like those found in other social Hymenoptera, though the various groups of these develop sociality independently through convergent evolution. 1. The typical colony consists of 1 or more egg-laying queens, numerous sterile females workers, soldiers, and, seasonally, many winged sexual males and females. 2. In order to establish new colonies, ants undertake flights that occur at species-characteristic times of the day. 3 swarms of the winged sexuals, known as alates, depart the nest in search of other nests. 4. The males die shortly thereafter, along with most of the females. 5. A small percentage of the females survive to initiate new nests. 6. A queen ant, formerly known as a gin, is an adult, reproducing female ant in an ant colony. She is usually the mother of all the other ants in that colony. Some female ants, such as the Cataglyphus, do not need to mate to produce offspring, reproducing through asexual parthenogenesis or cloning, and all of those offspring will be female. 1. Others, like those in the genus Chromatogaster, mate in a nuptial flight. Queen offspring ants among most species develop from larvae specially fed in order to become sexually mature. Depending on the species, there can be either a single mother queen or potentially hundreds of fertile queens. 2. Not every colony of ants has a queen. Some colonies have multiple queens. Queen ants are the only members of a colony to lay eggs. After mating, they can produce thousands, sometimes millions, of eggs during their lifetime. A queen of Lasius niger was held in captivity by German entomologist Hermann Appel for 283 years. Also, a Pogona myrmex oleae has a maximum estimated longevity of 30 years in the field. Thanks for watching. Flying Ant Day is an informal term for the day on which future queen ants emerge from the nest to begin their nuptial flight. 6. Although citizen science-based research has demonstrated that nuptials flights are not particularly spatially or temporally synchronized. 7. 8. However, the number of ants flying on certain days can be large enough to be detected by Weather Service radar systems, resembling rain showers. 9. In most species, the male ants fly alongside them, although they are smaller and less noticeable. The queens fly around, some covering very long distances, others only a few meters, then mate and drop to the ground, where they lose their wings and attempt to start a new ant colony. The mass of flying insects often attracts the attention of predators, such as birds, and it is common to see flocks gorging on the readily available food. This phenomenon occurs in many colonies simultaneously when local weather conditions are appropriate, to reduce the effectiveness of predation and to ensure that the queens and males from different colonies stand a chance of meeting and interbreeding. It therefore has the appearance of being a timed event or that the ants somehow communicate. However, neither of these is likely to be the case. It could be simply a common response to temperature, humidity, and wind speed and time of year. 10.